Welcome along to this webinar, all around never wasting a good crisis, reimagining tourism in Kent. I'm so pleased to welcome Dr. Julianne Thiemer from our Kent Business School and Deirdre Wells, OBE Chief Exec of Visit Kent. Ladies, over to you.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Welcome, everybody. My name is Julianne Thiemer. I am a lecturer at Kent Uni. I have a PhD in management and an MA in tourism and development studies. And my main research area is small-scale tourism. I mainly look into backpacker tourism, but I work a lot with small and medium-sized enterprises such as yourself. I also do have a bit of industry experience. I worked a couple of years in tourism advertising and also as an online marketing manager for a small-scale tour operator. As you might have caught from my accent, I'm not British. I'm born in Eastern Germany, but I've made the UK my home for the last 8 years, 7 of which were in Kent. I've lived in Canterbury and now moved to Ramsgate about a year ago, and am working in Medway on the beautiful historic dockyard. So I have some experience living and working in one of the prime tourism locations in Kent as well. Now for today, what I'll be talking about are a few things that obviously relate to the crisis and the tourism industry. I'll first look at the current situation, where we're at, and also some predictions of what's to come. Secondly, a question I would like to explore in the presentation, but then also in the discussion with you, obviously, what kind of tourism do we want in Kent? A third very important question that has come up during this crisis is how we can reassure tourists so they feel safe and build the trust with them. And a fourth topic I want to explore with you is innovation in the time of a crisis, before we then conclude, and I'll hand over to Deirdre. Now, what's going on? We've all watched the news, we all know what's going on, especially throughout April and May. The global tourism industry, we have to say, has pretty much stopped. This is unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this before. So this is our starting point pretty much that we have to deal with now. We've seen empty places, empty spaces, empty transport, no flights. And now that countries and places are slowly opening up again, we can see that there is still quite a hesitation to go out again, and there's certain regulations that regulate how we can go out, where we can go as well. So this is quite a challenge for the tourism industry that's so reliant on the mobility of people, because this mobility is just not happening at the moment, or in a very different way. We've seen empty beaches in beachside locations, in beach destinations that are slowly filling up now. We've seen empty major cities due to lockdown, but also due to government regulations of who can come in and who cannot come in. But as I said, countries, regions, cities are slowly opening up again under different regulations. However, it has also given us the chance to breathe and also rethink. A lot of the cities especially have been complaining about over-tourism in the last years. Places like Rome, like Barcelona, Venice, where people were just, especially locals, were just saying it's too much. And we have seen throughout the crisis where tourists couldn't come to those places, that the locals have reclaimed those public spaces. I've had a friend in Rome who said, oh, I finally explored Rome again, and it's actually quite nice where I live, because she wouldn't go and out and explore her own city because it was just too crowded all the time. And cities, places, regions in general are also rethinking tourism. They rethink what kind of tourism do they want to have, what kind of economy do they want to have. For example, Amsterdam just introduced stricter regulations on second homes and holiday lets within the historic center. And Ibiza is rethinking the whole party tourism, with potentially wanting to close down, not giving out licenses for those big party temples. Yeah, so it's also a time to reflect and rethink. A question we also have to ask ourselves is, do we want tourism now? We can have a look at other countries, other regions that are slightly ahead of us, that were ahead of us in the outbreak and also in the reopening, major tourist destination as well. And it's not looking too promising, I have to say. If we look, so these are headlines from this week. If we look at Spain, for example, the people from the cities are fleeing to the coast because it's getting hot, potentially bringing the virus to rural places that weren't that affected before. So rural places, like we do also have in Kent, might not be super happy with an influx of tourists, with an influx of people from the big city potentially bringing a virus to them, because they often don't have the infrastructure, as we can see in Cornwall, for example, where the whole of Cornwall has one hospital with 15 ICU beds. If you have a massive influx of tourists, then as they do every summer, and with this added on crisis, you put a massive strain on those resources, on the infrastructure there. So we have to be wary of a potential second wave happening. That is currently actually happening in Spain, Greece, Japan, and Australia. Australia has closed down certain regions again and has limited inter-regional travel again. Yeah, so we need to ask ourselves as well, can we deal with the tourists? Can our infrastructure take it? So we have to find this fine balance between economic recovery, because it's such an important sector for us, but also staying safe for both we as communities, our locals, but also the tourists. But it's not all doom and gloom. Even though we had a massive downturn, we had pretty much a standstill of the global tourism industry. The UK has quite a diverse economy. We don't rely only on tourism, which is good. And what's fantastic is that we have a very, very high rate of domestic tourism. So we're not really reliant on people from outside of the UK coming to us. Also, over the last years, domestic travel has increased within England. It has been growing on average for 2% per year over the last years, and I suspect then that this year it will be growing even more. The average length of a trip was 3 days for domestic travel, and I think we can do better. If I remember for Kent, we have a very high number of day trippers, especially coming down from London, which hopefully we can increase now to overnight guests, since they spend more money. Now, how does the consumer feel? If you haven't looked, what I find very interesting is a weekly survey that Visit Britain does to go to what the consumer actually wants, how they feel. And we can see a development there. So currently, the main reasons why consumers feel they don't want to take a trip is obviously they are scared that they will catch the virus. And a second reason is that they don't know what to do because there's fewer opportunities of things to do. Yeah, attractions might still be closed. There's fewer opportunities to eat and drink out, which of course now the pubs have opened or are allowed to open. But last week people were still quite hesitant. If people are planning on going on holidays, either short break, which is up to 3 days, or longer, yeah, proper holiday within the UK, they prefer the traditional seaside and coastal towns and the countryside villages, which I think is good news for us because we have both. And throughout the last weeks, we could also see that there's a trend that people become more confident in taking a short trip or holiday within the UK this summer. Because, you know, everyone has been locked up for quite some time now and people are desperate to get out. But it's still only about 1/3 of the population who's considering that. Yeah? So if we scaled it up, we might only have about 1/3 of customers really than what we're usually used to. Although, you know, I have to say in Kent, we do have a massive advantage, which is our proximity to London with the, you know, 9 million people around there. And also that seaside resorts, which we have quite a few of, have become quite trendy in the last years. And looking at the data, it seems that they're still becoming more and more attractive again to the consumers. Now, when we look at the data from those surveys, the Visit Britain also asks where are people planning on staying on the next short break or holiday. And I think that might be maybe some space where we could improve because everyone is heading to Cornwall or to Scotland. We are on par, surprisingly, with London, which I would have not expected because I did not expect people would want to visit London currently. But maybe they think the same, that it's empty and they can get around easier. Yeah, so that's for this summer. Yeah, these are the trends pretty much that people are heading to the always popular Cornwall, Devon area, and also Scotland. If we look at breaks throughout October to March, so autumn to spring, people still want to go to Cornwall and Devon. More people want to go to London, and we're pretty much, Southeast is pretty much on the same level as over the summer holidays. So yeah, I think maybe Deirdre can say something about this. Where are some chances what we can improve? When we look at what people plan to do, unsurprisingly, they're looking at outdoor stuff. Yeah, people want to get out. People have been locked in their flats, in their houses if they're lucky, for long enough. And also we know from our studies, from the scientists, that the transmission of the virus is massively reduced outdoors, so people feel safer being outdoors. So they're planning to visit beaches, mountains, yeah, those kind of things. So they're more likely to do that, yeah, 42% more likely than usual. Engage in outdoor activities, yeah, maybe go for a hike, go swimming, go cycling. So that's becoming more and more important. And also entertain the kids outside, yeah, theme parks, playgrounds, those things. And as we can see from that data, that the indoor activities are very much not so important, that people are less likely to engage in them, such as even, yeah, museums, cathedrals, which we have 2 of in the county, yeah, people are a bit hesitant to visit them, or they're not that important. Yeah, the outdoor activities are the draw, really. And finally, when we look at the accommodation that people want to stay in, unsurprisingly, for this summer, people are very much looking at camping. Yeah, that seems to be a something that seems safer to them, because you're more dispersed. Yeah, you're on your own little tent, you do your own thing. But still are also looking at hotels and cottage, like holiday lets, where you rent the whole, like a whole flat or cottage. Yeah, and are less inclined to stay in a B&B or guest house, which I find very interesting. However, again, looking at the autumn to spring, people are more inclined to stay at, obviously less at doing some camping due to the weather probably, and are more inclined to stay in hotels, private homes, so like Airbnb rentals, for example, and again, holiday flats and cottages. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind depending on what your business is. And when we look at what they want from the accommodation providers, there are a couple of topics that come up. Yeah? So the highest factor that people were really emphasizing is really cleanliness, unsurprisingly. So people were looking at, yeah, enhanced cleaning regimes, that there are hand sanitizers available, and that social distancing measures are in place. Yeah? For them, it was also, for the consumer, very important that there's a flexibility. Yeah, that was a second very important topic. Flexibility around booking, yeah, that there's free cancellation, that the bookings are transferable, yeah, maybe to a later date. So these are very important topics. I think that we will be exploring a little bit as well. Now, looking at this as a kind of summary for the first part, what kind of tourism can we expect? Yeah, so domestic tourism mainly, even though travelers, I think, from the EU are allowed to come to the UK, but I think that there is some hesitation in general within Europe to fly, really, to come over. People are looking to get away from the city. Yeah, they're looking for nature, for outdoor experiences, for rural experiences. Possibly, I think, where there might be a chance for Kent might be agritourism. Yeah, that could get a boom, really, because if we look at what other trends were there now during the lockdown, there was a surge in interest for people to like grow their own food, to making sourdough. Yeah, if you looked on your social media, everyone was making sourdough. Yeah, so there is a resurgence and interest in where food comes from, for example, and I mean, we're the Garden of England, so we're just perfect for that. Another thing that will be very important, especially this summer, will be intergenerational family travel. Yeah, a lot of families have been apart during this time, where the grandparents couldn't see their grandchildren, for example. So people are trying to make up for lost time. Yeah, and they can travel now in those bubbles. So people want to make up for this time and want to engage in meaningful travel. Yeah, meaningful, spending time with family and friends, but also a lot of people had time to think about their lives, really, and how quick things can change. So more people might also be inclined to do kind of bucket list travel. You know? So we could also think about what things do we offer in Kent that people might feel are on their bucket list. Yeah, they might not be able to travel to Machu Picchu currently, but you know, we have other things. that we can offer. Yeah, we do have hot air ballooning. We can offer glamping and stargazing. We have scuba diving. Yeah, we have a lot of activities that people have on their like wish list that they would like to try once in their life. Another trend that we'll see is, or that we already see, is that people will travel by car. Yeah, because there still is a mistrust in the public transport. So if they have a car or they will rent a car, people are more inclined to travel by car, which also has an implication for us, because as a destination, we need parking spaces. People are also traveling with their RVs if they have, or they have rented them. So we also need to provide facilities for that. No? When we look across within Europe, there is two trends really, that some destinations are going for the high value, low numbers tourism. Yeah, that they say, oh, we're going to put up our prices. We don't want that many people to come to just regulate that. But obviously you also need to offer that the product then. Yeah, if you want to attract high value customers, you need to have nice hotels, you need to have maybe nice shopping opportunities, nice eating out opportunities there. And on the other hand, we have the other extreme where they're slashed prices, where especially small businesses are very desperate to get customers in. I've seen hotels in Greece that sell their rooms for like a tenner per night, which is crazy because they're losing money. So if people are going, if entrepreneurs are going for that strategy, we have to be very, very careful that there's no race to the bottom. So yeah, we need to be mindful of like pretty much two consumer trends. Yeah, first of all, the people that, like me, that were very lucky, that could work from home but haven't been able to spend any money outside much, that might have a slightly higher disposable income now because we've been able to save. But then there are other people that have been laid off or furloughed, so have less money to spend on tourism. In general, though, I think this crisis also already shows us some trends that we need to deal with once Brexit goes through at the end of the year. And if we should not get a trade deal, which is very like, what it's looking like currently, some of these issues will come up again. So we can kind of prepare now, or at least address those things now. Now, as I said, we've had, during the crisis, we've also had time to think. So maybe it's also a time to think ahead, to reset and reimagine a little bit. What are some of the trends that we have seen? I've touched on one of them before, which is the localization. Yeah, localized tourism. As we said, we have a lot of domestic tourism within the UK already, so that's good. And in Kent, we have the proximity to London, so we might get even more DFLs, yeah, people coming down from London for the day, or hopefully also for the holidays, yeah, to stay longer. Also, what we've seen is locals as customers, and that's something that a lot of tourist destinations neglect really. They don't see locals as customers, but focus very much on the tourists. But that has the whole aspect of the seasonality. Yeah, it might be great for the summer, but if you don't cater to your locals over 3-4 months, why would they come back over the winter then when you really need them? And it's also creating, why are people traveling? Yeah, people are traveling also to engage with locals, even if it's just, an hour down on the train. If you cater to both locals and tourists, that will hopefully result in a more meaningful exchange between hosts and guests as well, yeah, and also create a more positive attitude towards tourism in the community. What we've also seen is a refocusing of public spaces on local needs. As I said earlier, especially in cities, but we can see it also, I've seen it here along the coast, that some places are just made for tourists and keep the locals out at certain points in the year. So we've seen a reclaiming of spaces, yeah, throughout lockdown. As people, as I said, go and explore their own cities. The picture on the slide is from Prague. That's Karl's Bridge, where locals celebrated a dinner outside on the bridge to celebrate the end of lockdown. And if you've been to Prague before, seen pictures, yeah, this is usually jam-packed, like can't stop. It's just masses of people going there, and no local would go even close to the old city centre, especially in the summer. Yeah. So we've seen those trends that yeah, locals are reclaiming their spaces because they have felt excluded from their own city, town, or area. Now it's also time to think about what kind of tourism do we want then. I think a lot of times we try to minimize the negatives of tourism, but hopefully we can move towards maximizing the positives of tourism, which is not only income, but also cultural exchange, mutual understanding, and also, of course, employment, income generation. One way of doing that is to place the community back at the heart of planning. Because as I said, yeah, in the previous slide, we've had a lot of places, spaces that the local community was excluded from. That there's more of a collective decision making going on again. How can we reclaim those public spaces? In the tourism literature, we have a term called carrying capacity. And that's twofold. We have a cultural carrying capacity. So when you as a local don't feel welcome in your own city or town anymore, yeah, when you just feel it's foreign to you, yeah, because it's not your own anymore. And then there's of course also the physical carrying capacity. How many people can you actually fit into a space, into a place? Which is now becoming more important, yeah, very, very important due to social distancing measures, yeah. If we think of Margate Main Sands during the summer, with loads and loads of people, where you can hardly walk, yeah, in between towels and blankets and tents and stuff. We've seen it just recently that went through the media through Botany Bay. Yeah, I've included some pictures. Yeah, where also then the locals were not so happy about so many people coming to the beach and using the beach as a toilet and leaving all the rubbish behind. So that's very important to think about. And one way to think about it is through the tourism flow management. Yeah. So how do people move through a town, for example? Yeah. How do they get from the car park to an attraction, to a toilet, to get some food, maybe to another attraction, to a gift shop and back to the car park? Yeah. How are they moving through the town? This is very, very important currently, and we see some of this already put, some measures already put in place by the councils. Yeah. So do we implement traffic-free zones, which some towns and cities have done? Yeah, so there's enough space for social distancing on the road. Do we introduce a one-way system? Yeah, also for walking, not just for cars, but also for walking. How do we close off streets? What will the signage look like? Yeah, how do we signpost that? And who will enforce it, which is also very important because we can't rely on people just following what we'd like them to do. Yeah, so this becomes really, really important now, how we manage this flow through the town, but also through an attraction. Yeah, if you are, if you have a tourism attraction, I'm thinking of the historic dockyard, for example, how do you manage the flow? Yeah, where's your entry, exit? Can people access, for example, toilet facilities, food facilities? Yeah, how do they move through your attraction? And similar, if you have a restaurant, yeah, how do they move without getting in contact with too many people? Yeah, and how is that monitored? So these are really, really important questions to look at currently. Also, people have looked at then how can we disperse the tourists? Yeah, that they're not all clustering at certain attractions, for example, but how can we get them to visit other parts as well? Other parts of a city, other parts of a town. Yeah. So we do not have attractions concentrated in one place, but since we need to get people to not congregate in big masses and big crowds, we need to have attractions dispersed throughout the area, really. So that, yeah, that's a challenge, obviously, because most attractions are immobile, but it's something to think about within the community of what could be done. Yeah, so it's very, very important, again, to get community there on board, especially with the higher risk of a second outbreak, like we've seen in the other countries again, and its influence, yeah, on the local communities. Because one thing we don't want is the sentiment that we've seen in the last years in some cities, but also I've heard around, yeah, Thanet at some points as well, where it's this, you know, tourists, please go home. Yeah, we don't want to hear sentiment. You have people that obviously that rely on the tourism industries, such as yourselves, yeah, that make an income from it, but you don't want this hostile rest of the environment, rest of the community to be hostile towards tourists. Yeah, you want hopefully something that's, yeah, a very positive experience for the tourists and for the community themselves as well. Yeah, so it's important to also get the people on board that don't directly earn from tourism. Also, when we think about what kind of tourism we want, we also might want to think about or rethink how we measure success. Yeah. Nowadays, a lot of, you know, most of the time success is measured in growth numbers and money, but we might also want to think about the community well-being, for example. I've read a term the other day, which was wealth, so WELLTH, yeah, instead of the money wealth, the well-being wealth. Yeah, we've seen that in some countries that are doing that, like Bhutan, they have a gross happiness index instead of a GDP. So we also might want to move towards measuring success, not only in monetary terms, but also in the quality of life for locals, and also, especially in these times, the security of the locals. Yeah, to especially avoid a second wave. One thing that lockdown has shown was solidarity, which is great. Yeah, we've seen this massive rise in solidarity between neighbors, streets, people in general. And I think that's a chance for us to harness it as well, yeah, to maybe change business models to more social enterprises that also give back to the community, because obviously that would then give a different standing in the community as well. They would have a more positive outlook on the enterprises too, yeah. And a lot of people have already were already rethinking the business model because they had to now during lockdown. Yeah, we've had so many things going online, and hospitality businesses doing delivery services, attractions offering online experiences. Yeah, so again, if we rethink a business model, also think about it with the community in the back of your mind. And also very important, which is also something we've seen very much now, is this return to local. And I think we can use this more in our tourism and hospitality businesses, that we have a more local supply chain, because that will benefit more people around the area as well, and again create a more positive impact, be it on obviously income, but also on the mental impact. Yeah, saying like, oh great, we all benefit from this. Yeah, we are the Garden of England. We have loads and loads of food stuff around. Yeah, and that is definitely something that people have become more aware of, because we've had, you know, like farm shops doing deliveries as well. So people have gotten used to these things as well, to eating more seasonal in that way probably as well. And I think that's something we can harness, especially in the hospitality sector. Yeah, accommodation, obviously food sector, but also most attractions offer some form of food places as well. So I think that would be really, really good to have a more integrated local supply chain. And hopefully some of you are here today and can have a chat amongst each other, how you can bring yourselves together and benefit from cooperation there. I think Deirdre will talk about this later then as well, but what's really important currently is destination management, yeah, rather than just, I just put that in quotes, yeah, just marketing, but we need an investment in skills, yeah, to skill up people, because suddenly we are faced with doing everything online, yeah. For example, we need to change a lot of things. We have different health and safety protocols. So people, yeah, the different skill sets required. And these could also be community assets then, yeah. Skills always benefit the community, yeah, and not just the tourism industry. But we also need the investment into more community infrastructure, yeah, not just tourism infrastructure, but also infrastructure that benefits the community, such as art centers, or, you know, music venues, or green infrastructure like cycle paths, yeah, useful for tourists, but also very useful for the community itself. The marketing, I think, is what Visit Kent does brilliantly already, is, yeah, that we base it very much now on the local culture and assets that we have, and the outdoors. Yeah, if you as a business should not open currently due to either regulations, or you feel like you just can't, you can still market around the future, yeah, to build anticipation, to inspire a trip, and to stay in the mind of people, yeah, that they don't forget about you. We need to reassure safety, which I'll come to next. And you also need to do that through the channels that you market through, yeah? You don't need, like, you need to show the people that they can trust you, that your attraction, your B&B, yeah, that it's safe, yeah? Maybe walk them through in a little video and post it on your social media, yeah? So whatever your usual channels are that you reach your consumers, yeah, use them as well to reassure your potential consumers, customers. And but also keep in the back of your mind that some things have changed due to the crisis, yeah? We're not using brochures anymore, because they're just a host of, you know, getting to contamination across. So you might have to look at different channels there as well. But it's very, very important that you don't just tell what you plan to do or what you have done in regards to health and safety protocols, but also show it, you know? So let's have a look at how we can actually reassure tourists, yeah? So for this crisis, there is a whole kind of new trust that has been built. Yeah, a trust between host and guests, a trust that people have washed their hands, that they have not traveled when they felt sick, and that they will be taken care of should they fall sick. Yeah, so there's a new level of trust that is or has developed or has to develop now. Yeah, there's more trust, has to be more trust between the host and guests than usual. Yeah? As I discussed earlier, the management of tourism flows is super important currently, yeah, both in businesses and also in public spaces. Specific measures need to be implemented according to government regulations, but I would recommend also beyond, because I read a study yesterday where the public was asked how much they trust the government in handling this crisis, and it was not very good. Like, people don't trust the government anymore really with this. So if you just adhere to the government regulations, people might be satisfied, but if you really want to make them feel safe, go beyond that maybe. Yeah. Specific measures, as we've seen before on the in the study from Visit Britain, that people are looking at is contactless payments throughout. Yeah. That you have safety protocols about cleaning tables, cleaning rooms. Yeah. Safety protocols around staff uniforms, or what they're wearing, yeah, their clothing, how often it gets washed. If you have ventilation systems, that they are checked regularly, with disinfected regularly, yeah, especially in your kitchens as well, or just a lot of places have turned off their ACs in general. Yeah? Also train your staff to recognize COVID symptoms, yeah, so that people could either be taken care of or just not admitted to your establishment. Yeah, the communication with your staff is very, very essential. Yeah, that to on one hand to have this unity, because you all need to work together now, but also that everyone knows what they're doing, and that leads to contingency plans, I think, which is again super important to have plans in place that are what ifs. Yeah, what if your hotel accommodation provider, what if one of our guests falls ill? What do we do? Who is responsible for what? Yeah, who takes on what role with which responsibility? Yeah, according to staff. These contingency plans need to be, yeah, very specific. They need to be all mapped out and also communicated to the staff, obviously, so they know what they're doing if those things should happen. Hopefully they will not, but yeah, they need to be in place. We've seen a lot of when I talked about how you can reassure the guests earlier that you need to communicate it to them. Yeah, I've just picked a couple of examples from some accommodation providers, from restaurants, and so on how they're doing it. Yeah, I quite like the one in the middle that's from the Disney resort hotels, where they specifically state where they, yeah, in the room they're doing the extra cleaning. The AA, they do have this plaque now, yeah, where they it's kind of then a clean standard, yeah, that people will feel confident, and yeah, it's very important to display those things within your place, yeah, if you have a restaurant, whichever an activity, yeah. To display those things, but also to communicate it beforehand to your guests. Yeah, they need to be visible to the guests to instill the security and the trust. But yeah, as I said, communicate it beforehand, before the guests arrive, so they feel confident to book in the first place, but they also know what to expect. Yeah, when they come. So as usual, communication is the key. Now, this talk is also called never waste a good crisis, and crises have shown to be the time for innovation. Yeah, because it gives us the time to reflect. It gave us the time a lot, when we looked at what was going on in the world, to think about what kind of world we want to live in, what kind of country we want to live in, what kind of community we want to live in. Yeah, you are part of your communities, and you can assess best, where there were shortcomings before and what you would like to change. The best innovations are made on a community entrepreneurial level, because you know best what's going on. One method that is used to think about, to think of new innovations is design thinking, where the customer is at the center of the thinking and the new innovation. It needs a clearly defined problem or problems, with which we have with COVID and the surrounding issues. There are 4 stages of that, which might be helpful to think about problems. The emphasize stage is learn about your audience. So what does the customer want? Currently they want safety, they want to trust you, and they want different experiences than they have at home. They've been locked up at home for 3 months, 4 months. They want to go out, they want to experience something differently. In the define stage, you sharpen your key questions. So the one that you would like to answer currently, make them as specific as you can. For example, how can I ensure my customers and staff stay safe during the check-in process? Or what resources do I already have to create a safe experience for my customers? So make them very, very specific. In the ideate phase, comes from the name, you brainstorm and create those solutions to this very specific question. Brainstorming means nothing is a stupid idea. Think of the craziest things that you can think of. You might be surprised sometimes your solution hides in those crazy ideas. You can involve your staff if you have staff. If you have kids, involve them. Kids come up with the craziest ideas, and sometimes there's some good ideas in there actually that you can use. You could even involve your customers, maybe via social media, or ask them on their opinions. You might also want to think about in that stage if there's a possibility to integrate with other service or goods providers, that you could use, that you could work together with, cooperate with. And the prototype and testing phase is then, don't overthink, just try it out, see if it works. If it doesn't, go back to ideate new ideas, try them out. Rethink, how can we make things better? How can things be adjusted? How can things be made safer? How can they be made funner? So you might want to come up then with more ideas, more prototypes, and more testing. Now, when we look at innovations, we have seen quite a few now in the last months, it's bigger innovations, but also smaller ones. And innovation doesn't need to be groundbreaking. It might just be something new for you, for your business. I've picked a few that I thought were quite interesting. In the bottom corner you can see a one-way system, a walking system, very low cost, but just to ensure this kind of safety and the flow of where people are going within an establishment there as well. On the top, the little dining, the white and yellow dining area, that's at a Cornwall hotel, who has put into the tent that they usually would have events like weddings in, 16 private dining rooms, with those just those little walls in between, so people, if they're traveling in their little social bubble, for example, within with maybe like extended family, they can have a private dining experience there without feeling the need to go out to maybe a bigger restaurant. seen in other places things to socially distance on the beach, yeah, those day beds, for example, or another small measure that I found quite endearing is to provide the guests upon check-in with a little safety package, yeah, with hand sanitizer, face masks, gloves maybe if you want to, yeah. And obviously for accommodation, we've also seen over the last years especially, but more importantly this season then, the rise of glamping, yeah, the glamorous camping in all its different forms, be it in the form of a safari tent or the more high-priced form, as I've put a picture on here, in those beautiful stargazing domes, you know? In hospitality, we've also seen some very interesting innovations to keep the social distancing in the back of your mind. My favorite still, very low cost, very fun, is on top there was a cafe in Germany that had the pool noodle hat. Yeah, so people would have a 1 meter pool noodle to each side. So there would be always a 2 meter distancing, otherwise they would bump into each other's pool noodles. Or we've seen a lot of restaurants now that enforce the social distancing by putting, for example, stuffed animals on chairs so people don't sit down there. In other places, cafes, where you can only put people on every other table, for example, to not make it feel like the restaurant's half empty. People have put cardboard cutouts of maybe loyal customers there, yeah, that would always be there, or of celebrities, and have dressed the table accordingly as well, so it just feels like you're not, you know, by yourself in a big room. We've also seen for more high-end restaurants, for example, the restaurant in Amsterdam that's at the center of the slide, they've put up little greenhouses, yeah, for tables of 2, which looks really, really nice as well, and again enforces the social distancing. And we've also seen those domes used in hospitality, yeah, to put tables in there. Now, when we think of events, there have also been some new innovations around social distancing measures. The top one with the boats, that's a proposal that will be reality soon in Paris. Yeah, so it's a boat cinema, which I thought might be quite interesting for you know, our area as well. We have some of the infrastructure there already. We have boats, lots of boats in towns, yeah, like Canterbury, and obviously on the coast. I also like the idea of the boat cinema and the leisure centre. That will still keep people apart as well, and will also manage your flow. That after the film is over, not everyone will just run to the door, but yeah, you have a paced way of getting people out. We've seen drive-in cinemas popping up again, especially, yeah, as we said, people are coming by car now, are traveling by car, so that might be a way of then giving them something to do. And the picture on the bottom left, that's from Prague, and they have done an outdoor performance, so like theater, where the performers were on a stage but also performing in between the cars as well. Yeah, so it's not like being at the cinema, or not like being at the theater, but it's a way to get people engaged and also spend some money. And the social distancing in public spaces, there have been also different measures implemented throughout the world, which I think we could easily do. Things like the circles in a park to keep people apart. I saw that just yesterday Bristol actually did that as well. Yeah, so you just need a council worker to go around and spray paint those. I also quite like on the bottom right, that's from a market in India where they've used local artists to draw a massive mural about COVID and social distancing. Yeah, this I find is again quite a nice way to enforce those measures, but also involve the community. Yeah, if you involve local artists, if you make it like a public space, then that's a nice way of doing. For attractions, what I found might be a good measure is also an example from India where they use big umbrellas. Yeah, so the umbrellas provide the space in between people, and maybe they have to carry it, yeah, an umbrella throughout, which is great because we know the weather in the UK in the summer might turn very quickly as well. So the umbrellas are great for keeping the rain out, but also the social distancing. It would obviously need disinfection after each guest. To conclude, I'm almost at the end. For the short term, I think we need to be quite realistic. Yeah, there will be an economic downturn. Yeah, due to coronavirus and also due to Brexit. Yeah, we need to prepare for that. And the better you're prepared for it, the better, the higher the chance of your survival, really. Yeah. Look for funding and opportunities. Yeah, that there are. There's skills training throughout. I think maybe Deirdre can talk about this later on, because I think they're running an initiative there. There are funding opportunities by the government. We just had a webinar yesterday about this for small, medium-sized enterprises. And once that recording is out, I think it might be really, really useful for you to look at that as well. And Marcus can provide the link. And very important to, yeah, collaborate really, yeah, work together. This is not really the time for individualism, but to create a safe experience, an exciting, safe product for the tourists. Yeah, so coordinate, collaborate, yeah, and rise together instead of going at it alone. Yeah, safety should not be a competitive advantage, but it's something that tourists expect. Yeah, so we need to provide a fully safe destination experience. Yeah, it's not like, oh, this hotel is safe but the rest is not, so then the tourists won't come. Yeah, as I read somewhere, a rising tide lifts all boats. So I think, yeah, that that's something that we should try to do and all work together. And in the long term, yeah, longer term, in the next years, obviously, yeah, there's a push to return to the past, like, you know, not the new normal but the normal on an industry and government level. But yeah, people have time to think, and the values of the past might be less supported now. Yeah, because also due to new innovations that we have and due to the creativity that's currently happening. Yeah, the crisis has shown us again where the inequalities lie. Yeah, within and has emphasized them really. Yeah, we could look at employment, yeah, how quickly some of the big chains were happy to get rid of staff. It has shown us inequalities, yeah, throughout class really, where people working, how they can work, access to technology, where they can participate in those all exciting new opportunities or not. Also access to healthcare, yeah, which is especially a rural and city divide really. But also, yeah, for me, very important, or I think one thing that has been shown is that there's hope, yeah, hope for a different, hopefully better world, yeah, because what has been shown that there are values within our community that are so strong, that is the togetherness, that is the community, that is the cooperation, and we might be able to harness them through alternative economies that have popped up already, such as green economies, yeah, with the local sourcing that I was talking about earlier, or also the gift economy, where people just pay what they can, yeah, or people are sharing things freely, yeah, but driving those new values, yeah, will be a consensus, yeah, consensus decision making, together, and very importantly, the innovation and experimentation. Not everything you do might succeed, but you try, this, and that will hopefully lead to a better future for your business, but also in general. And I'll now hand over to Deirdre from Visit Kent, who will elaborate on some of the topics as well.
Thank you so much, and vielen Dank, Juliana. Very interesting presentation. So I'm hoping you can all see that. So really great to be here. Thank you so much for your for inviting me. I just want to cover off a few things today. First, also some stats, just to reinforce some of the things that Juliana said, but also to give you a sense of what Visit Kent has been up to and the support that we can offer. So we talked a little bit about the sort of impact of tourism, and just to remind everybody what it means for Kent. So we get normally, on a normal year, would expect to get 65 million visitors every year, and they would spend about £4 billion. That creates about 70,000 jobs in Kent, which makes us one of the biggest employers in the county. And I just think it's really worth just, I suppose, resting on those stats for a second, because it means that the impact economically is huge, but also I think in terms of our communities too. But also, I mean, it was interesting, the number of destinations where concerns about over-tourism have arisen. It's also worth remembering that, of course, the spend and the economic impact of tourism is so vital. A lot of our small high streets and villages and towns simply wouldn't be able to survive without tourism. So really important that we balance those concerns about the impact on communities with the economic impact too. But it's also, of course, not just that economic impact. It is that sense that our tourism and hospitality businesses provide the kind of heart and soul of many of our communities. And it's something that I think we've really, really missed during lockdown. And I think it's made us realise how important the tourism and hospitality sector has been. And I think the only positive I think that we can take out of the pandemic is that it's also made the politicians realise that too, which is really, really critical. Just in terms of what we've been doing at Visit Kent, so as you can imagine, one of our huge jobs has been to support businesses across the county. So we've been delivering our own series of webinars, also cascading information from government, because the guidance and the information that's come down from business support has been incredibly fast moving. So interpreting that and sending that out and making sure that people are informed has been really key. We also sit on a number of national bodies, including the Government Tourism Industry Emergency Response Group. And that's really enabled us to be able to raise issues directly with government for those things that have slightly fallen down the crack. I would say that there is a huge amount of support on our Visit Kent business website. So if you haven't visited it already, please do, because not only does it have all the latest up-to-date guidance for businesses and issues around funding, opportunities, grants, but it also signposts you to the support that we are currently receiving through the Interreg Experience project, which is all about innovation product development, and we are currently signing up businesses to that project. So do please have a look at that if you are interested. The community engagement piece has been really key, and in that I would sort of use it in the broadest sense of the word. So that's around making sure that friends of Kent, I suppose, whether they're residents, whether they're businesses, whether they're domestic tourists down from London's or wider international visitors, that we have done all we can to keep the Kent brand top of mind while we've been in lockdown. It's quite difficult to do the marketing bit of destination management when visitors aren't allowed to visit. So doing as much as we can online, developing virtual itineraries has been really important. But actually, what's also been very important is ensuring that the management side of the destination management, that business support, that strategic engagement with people as we think about how we're going to emerge has been incredibly important. We do a lot, of course, to monitor the impact, and I think we will be doing this for many years to come. We always do monitor the volume and value of our visitor month in, month out, but it will be more important than ever as we go forward. I just wanted to share a couple of stats from what we're seeing in terms of consumer sentiment, because that I think is really critical. What we're all struggling to do, I think, is crystal ball gaze, not only as to what's happening with the pandemic, but also how people are going to behave. Some viewers who may have seen me speak before will have heard me talk about the 1 in 5. So the 1 in 5 visitors who will be busting a gut to get out and do things as quickly as possible. Well, the good news is, since we've been open on the 4th of July, they've already been. So that 20% have already visited. There is a 20% at the other end of the spectrum who probably won't visit for about a year. And there's quite a significant chunk in the middle of that 50% who are still incredibly nervous. So 50 to 60% of people are in very much the wait and see mode and seeing how things go. There's a new good to go mark, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is the Visit England mark, which is a way of demonstrating that your business is COVID secure, and that is really important in terms of that consumer messaging and reassurance. What people are most worried about is not whether organizations are set up well or cleaning properly, or it's how other people are going to behave. Will they socially distance? And will organizations be able to enforce it? So yes, we're all worried about other people. Interestingly, this is one of the most recent bits of information, is that people would feel more confident if wearing masks was compulsory. And I think it was interesting what Juliana was saying about the fact that you know, going beyond the government guidelines can really help to reassure. The other thing is that as things are starting to open, visitors are expecting to receive a full offer, so that when they go, they will be able to do all the things they can normally do, even if it's in a slightly socially distanced way. But the thing that they're most worried about are the 3 T's. So tea, toilets and technology, I would say. You know, if your loos aren't open, they won't come. Very straightforwardly. Will they be clean? Will they be socially distanced? Will they be COVID secure? Same with their food and beverage. What's going to be open? What won't? Will I be able to eat? Can I bring my own food if I want to? The technology bit is also interesting. Over 90% of visitors are looking on websites before they travel, particularly to attractions. And this is partly because you have to pre-book in many cases, but it's a fantastic way of being able to communicate with your audience, to tell them what's going to be different, and to be able to do that reassurance piece, as well as manage expectations. The Visit England research Juliana touched on, and I think there is a mixed picture here. Uncertainty still really, really high. So the further we get into this pandemic, the further out the normality looks. So we're now looking at things only being back to normal by the end of the year. Only 26% think that's going to be the case, and that's gone down a lot in the last few weeks. But there is confidence in UK short breaks, and they rise very dramatically, as you can see, as you go into the autumn. So that, I think, is the real opportunity for us as a destination. How we get there is the big challenge. So as Juliana said, coming by car is really still going to be the top way of getting here. Public transport still making people feel quite nervous. And I know that colleagues at Southeastern will be working really hard to start building up that consumer confidence message. Coastal and seaside towns and countryside and villages are the most popular destination, which is really great news for the Garden of England, because we have those in spades, or bucket in spades. So it really a great opportunity for us to push Kent as a key destination. And as Juliana said, not surprisingly, people want to stay as much as they can in a type of accommodation bubble. One of the key things that we have to do as a destination is start to do that promotion piece, but do it in a very reassuring way. And this is a very different scenario for a destination marketing organization. For many, many years, we've just been at the mercy of our funding in terms of how big, how bold can you be advertising, who are you competing with. But what we've never had to do is really do so in a way that is all about respecting public health and getting that messaging right. So we worked with colleagues across Kent. This happened at the beginning when the lockdown started to ease first and we were able to go into open spaces. And use the countryside code of respect, protect, enjoy to start sending out those messages about getting people out and about, but doing so in a way that respected the environment and protected public health. Because one of the things that was certainly being borne out in the research was that the government message of stay at home had been incredibly effective, so effective that people were too frightened to go anywhere. And if we didn't get people used to going out and about, then our tourist businesses were really, really going to struggle. And we need to get people out and about in a way they felt comfortable about in order to start getting some of that revenue moving again. Since the guidance has been issued and more of the tourism sector has opened up, alongside that has been the Visit England Good to Go mark. And that really is a kite mark that says that you have followed all the COVID secure guidance, and it's very easy to do and register for. So do please, if you haven't already, go online. We've got links to it on our website, and that will enable you to really reassure your visitors that you are ready to receive them in a COVID secure way. It's the mark that everybody's looking for. There are lots of things around, but this is the gold standard. So do please do it if you can. Lots of organizations already have. And it also enables you to capitalize on the Know Before You Go campaign, which Visit England are doing nationally, which is effectively a check before you travel campaign. It's linked to all the destinations and it tells visitors who's open and who's got the kite mark. So a really good way of doing that piece of reassurance that customers are looking for. But we will also be doing our consumer confidence campaign too. So we are looking to really capitalize on that Garden of England, safe, open, beautiful landscape that's on the doorstep of one of the biggest markets in the country, of course, in London. To be able to start to get people to explore and to rediscover Kent, particularly this summer. We have a window opportunity while the tourism industry is reopened to be able to get some revenue back to our businesses who, of course, have suffered so badly during the lockdown. It will be launched in August. It will be focused on both local residents, but also those within a 2-hour drive. And the whole focus of it will be around consumer confidence. So we're doing all we can to try and get our visitors back to normal. But I suppose one of my key thoughts would be, how do we actually get people back to better? And I'm shamelessly stealing a wonderful catchphrase that Richard Hicks from Medway came up with at a recent conference I was on. Because actually, I think as we have paused our industry, how do we ensure that we re-emerge in a way that actually makes things better for both the residents, but also for the businesses too? So are there opportunities for us to be able to look at what we can do differently? So one of the things that's going to be really interesting was, will we ever see this again? Will we ever see people commuting in the way that they have over the last many, many decades? Or will this become the new workstation? And although those who work in Pret-a-Manger in the Square Mile or in Canary Wharf may be lamenting the demise of that commuter train, I think for our towns and high streets, this could be a huge boon. an opportunity for our local businesses to really start to see some footfall in the week. And are we ready to be able to support that? All of that rediscovering of local farm shops, local produce, local coffee shops, independent coffee shops could suddenly see a real surge in local workers too. Although outbound travel is now allowed, I don't think we're seeing anywhere near the sort of clamoring to travel outbound that we have done in the past. I think it's forward bookings are running at about 10% at the moment. Does that as a destination focusing on great landscapes like this give us an opportunity to be able to encourage those who would normally get in a plane to rediscover Kent, but maybe do it in a way that gives us all an opportunity to, yes, benefit from tourism, but also do it in a way that supports communities and supports the environment. So as it's time and we're looking at how do we reimagine work, are we reimagining play as well? And some great examples that Juliana was showing earlier about how people are doing some really great things to support tourism as it comes back. That's one of our socially distanced punts there on the left. We've seen the Amsterdam greenhouses. I think they probably work very well at a particular period in the spring, but probably not so much in August. And I am so excited that the drive-in is back. So lots of places in Kent are already doing that. Some fantastic classic movies on show at the moment. But I definitely think that there is absolutely opportunity to do a boat cinema as well. So I think we do have an opportunity to start thinking about how we reimagine tourism. All of the trends that we were seeing over the last few years about people wanting to travel in a more sustainable way, people wanting experiences. Yes, we will have to think about that in a different way. So we will have to probably work harder to get people to start using public transport, but certainly cycling, walking, those more sustainable and more socially distanced form of transport is probably something that we can absolutely push. And with experiences, being able to do so in small bubbles, I suppose encouraging those re-engagement with nature that we've seen over lockdown, I think will be really key. So it's been an incredibly challenging time for the industry. And quite a daunting time as we try and salvage something from the summer and then manage our way through the winter. But actually, I think really important, wherever possible, to re-examine, re-innovate, and build for the future. And we are here to do everything that we can to support you. So I am happy to take any questions. I'm just seeing if there's anything come in to the chat.
Well, I've got a question. Well, thank you both so much. That was phenomenal and a real insight. This is impossible questions, but how long do we think this is really going to take, and ultimately will it ever be quite the same again? We've talked about innovation throughout. We talked about the drive-in is back in terms of the drive-in cinema and so on, and boats and cinemas and all sorts of things. Now is a really good opportunity to be rethinking about, I guess, what tourism looks like for the future, and that of course takes investment and how companies can be supported, our tourism industry can be really supported throughout that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of when it's going to come back, what we're looking at is probably us not getting back to pre-COVID levels. So that first slide of stats that I showed you, which is that 65 million visitors, 4 billion spend, I think we're looking at 2024 before we get back to that, which is a shame because I'd literally written my business plan last year, which said that we would be hitting 5 billion by 2025, but that was also the time where we had reinvented the year 2020 to be renamed Kenty 20, and we were full of festivals and events and all the rest of it, so lots changed in a few months. But yeah, I think it'll be a while before we get back to that, which is why I think your point about business support is really critical. So obviously a lot of support will stop in the autumn, just at the time when the industry is going into winter, which is very challenging. So we spend a lot of our time sort of lobbying government to say, well, all of the furlough support, all of that business grants have been fantastically supporting over the summer. But actually, what businesses will really need is further support over the winter in order to be able to reboot, because all we're really looking at this year, I think, is damage limitation. So lots of businesses are opening in a suboptimal way, partly because they're just desperate to get back and desperate to, you know, to engage with customers. But many of them are opening at 70% capacity. So it's not going to be the year you're going to make a lot of bucks, particularly when you've lost about 3 months already. So that's really going to be challenging. So that's why we're here, I suppose, to help as much as we can. But the innovation needs to continue, because I think we have some great examples of businesses that have done amazing things, who have gone online, you know, diversified over lockdown, who we hope will be able to continue to do that. And one of the things about the Experience Project is sharing some of that best practice as well.
And I suppose, and this comes from somebody who really promotes knowledge exchange and innovation, linking companies to the university. Innovation, of course, doesn't necessarily have to be the reinvention of some huge new app or some radical new business plan. Innovation, of course, can come in much smaller forms as well, and sometimes some of these iterative things. And I think through this process of COVID, which has obviously been horrendous, and just the impact across the world as, you know, as a pandemic has been awful, but it has made people rethink. Certainly around, we've seen a lot more of the traditional bricks and mortar retailers now looking at e-commerce. We've seen people really starting to, I suppose, having a bit of time to think, right, I've got to survive. What can we do differently? And it's great to hear that there is that support around, and there's all sorts of ways, and I won't launch into a sales pitch about the university, but there are all sorts of ways in which we can certainly all help facilitate that. We have now, thank you audience, got some questions. So if I read those out, I mean, we've got a question from Natalie at Kent Creative. I don't know if you want to unmute and come in and ask your own question.
I'm happy to come back on that events question, if that's cultural activity, Natalie, while you're trying to unmute. So I think suffice to say that on the weekly call to government that I do, the poor industry that has been most frustrated over the last few months and weeks has been the events industry. So and lots of our businesses across Kent really rely on that small and medium-sized events, whether it's music festivals, cultural events, whether it's weddings, whether it's corporate events. It's big business for the county. We now have some further clarification that outdoor events can take place in some, you know, I suppose, modest way, and will be able to do so in a greater extent from October. There's lots of experimentation going on in terms of performances, in terms of theatrical performances and also musical performances. I think one of the saddest things for me about lockdown, I'm in a choir, and my son plays a trumpet. So anything that involves singing or blowing things has been, you know, banned, and I think will be for many, many months to come. But I understand that the DCMS are looking at developing pilots to be able to see how actually you can do performance, how you can do it in a safe way. And everybody from Andrew Lloyd Webber downwards is trying desperately to demonstrate how the cultural sector, who again is so innovative, is able to deliver in a COVID secure way. I think there is definitely an opportunity over the summer while we're able to do outdoor performances to really push that. Yeah, and I think that what's really critical is those cultural events are so critical to our visitor economy in the county. So the sooner we can get them back, the better. But do rest assured, Natalie, that message is getting across loud and clear. And I would really encourage you Again, look on our website, but also on the Business Visits and Events Partnership, have got lots and lots of information about how you can hold, what you can do right now, and equally what you will be able to do later in the autumn.
And I think on that note, Natalie, I heard a crackle. Yes. Natalie, are you there?
Yes, I think I am.
I feel like some kind of news reporter.
Let me put the camera on as well then. Right.
Yes, let's get the full experience.
That's it, exactly. Great.
There
okay, well, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I didn't expect to speak, so I didn't have a working... Yeah, but you partly answered my question, but I wanted to... and I'm talking to some colleagues in arts organizations who had obviously to cancel their events. And I wanted to know if you had any feedback really more generally in Kent about what people expect to be doing and when. But maybe you don't, maybe it's too general.
Well, I think at the moment, I think all of the big events, so we were supposed to have the Folkestone Triennial this year, that's been put back, Estuary Festival's been put back, the Lambeth Conference, the Canterbury, Beckett 850, all of those big events have been moved back to next year. I think there is a sense that wherever possible, the event will take place next year, and it'll be used as an opportunity almost to reboot the county. Right. In terms of what people can do right now, the guidance is still relatively strict. It's mainly focused on outdoor gatherings of up to 30, with some progress towards indoor gatherings of up to 30 in the autumn, as long as things can be socially distanced. Where it gets tricky is any performance that is involving projecting, whether that's vocally singing or just drama. So that can be more challenging. What we are seeing is things like art classes, again, socially distanced art classes, obviously theatres, galleries and museums reopening. So there is some parts of the cultural sector that are reopening. The other thing that's really good news is that filming is looking like it's starting again over the summer. So I think baby steps really in terms of the creative sector, but things are starting to open up.
Yeah, I looked at the guidelines for arts organizations specifically, and it looks, well, what is planned at the moment is one thing, but because we don't really know what's going to happen, it's difficult to organize things. We have a small festival planned in Faversham for November. As it stands now, should be all right. So, yes. But we have to look at lots of alternatives. So,
yeah, well, I think as Juliana was saying, this is where you need your contingency planning.
Exactly.
So, at the moment, World Travel Market, which is one of the biggest travel shows in the world, is going ahead in November in Excel. But they will also have their, so I think a small festival under the current guidance should be fine.
Yeah.
I suspect what we'll end up with is much more a mode of local lockdowns. And unfortunately, if we're in the situation where Faversham is locked down, then obviously you'd be in trouble. Yeah. But hopefully we won't be in that. Exactly. Okay.
Great. Anyway, thank you for your feedback. Very useful.
Also, what I would advise is to talk to your audience, what they would like to see, how they would feel as well. Just as an example, I live in Ramsgate. We have the beautiful Ramsgate Music Hall here for gigs and stuff, and they have put a survey out to their customers, on social media, just asking, would you be willing to come to a socially distanced gig? Yeah, and people were saying no. Yeah, we want the full gig experience. We don't want to. Yeah, I've seen in Germany, obviously look back home, because they're a couple of weeks ahead of us. They've done socially distanced gigs where people just sit at tables, but you're not allowed to get up to dance, those kind of things. So it's a different experience. So you also need to check with your customers, would they actually come if you put it on in a different way.
the risk is that if you ask the question now, the answer is not going to be the same as in 2 or 3 months' time. Anyway, we have to adapt, don't we?
Indeed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. We've got some other questions that have come through now. Thank you, audience. So we've got Sheena. Sheena, I don't know if you want to come in, unmute and show your camera if you've got one. Hello, Sheena.
I'm here. Hello, everybody. Just first an update on Lambeth, Deirdre. It has now moved to 2022. I think they felt that because there's delegates coming from so many different countries, that it was too much of a risk to take for next year, just in case there wasn't a vaccine and COVID obviously had a second wave. So that's now scheduled for 2022. It's likely to be late July or August, but waiting on confirmation of the dates. And really my question was about what you felt about business tourism and international delegates coming to conferences. Our first large one is scheduled for spring. We've got about 300 to 400 delegates anticipated to come. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Thanks, Sheena. Good to see you. And thanks for the update on Lambeth. I think what we're going to see is a more hybrid approach. So a number of organizations have shifted to virtual conferences. I think it'll be a while actually before we see those 300-400 delegate conferences. We might be fine in the spring, we might be all vaccinated, it could be completely fine. If we're not, I would be really surprised if that's what we end up with. Having said that, when I look at what World Travel Market are planning for November, and what the events industry generally is saying is for those trade shows where you can absolutely manage visitor flow in the way that Juliana was talking about earlier, so that sense that, you know, that you've absolutely got people moving in a COVID secure way and you've got all your hygiene solutions, then yes, it's possible. I think it's back to consumer behavior again. I do not know how many people are going to want to get on a plane and travel to a conference when they've been talking to delegates online very happily. So I suspect what we might end up with is a hybrid approach. Having said that, I think that's an opportunity for Kent, because with the notable exception of the university, there is very, very little conferencing space in the county, and which has been something that's been incredibly challenging for us. But we have great incentive space. We've got great, those corporate team building opportunities. And I wonder whether when people are wanting to come back as teams in smaller groups, when they've been just zoomed out, those opportunities we can provide an offer. Whereas I think it'll be a while before people want to get together in a large conference space, 300 people all shoved in somewhere for 3 days. So it might all be fine by the time it gets to your conference in the spring, Sheena. But I think we need to be doing all we can to be supporting and exploring that hybrid virtual conference opportunity.
Yeah, we've been having training from our IS department. I'm actually due to run a training one next week. To get
the big challenge is how do you make any money out of it?
Exactly. Yeah. it will be nowhere near what you would make, obviously, if they were staying on campus using the accommodation catering facility.
Exactly.
And also to obviously the local economy and visiting.
Yeah.
So yes, sad times for conferences. We need to hope that things settle down. But positive that Lambeth obviously is still coming, albeit in a couple of years. So lovely to see everybody. Julianne, did you wish to say anything?
Yeah, I think it's something that, we need to get used to, and also looking at what Deirdre said with working from home. I think quite a few employers now have also seen the positives of having people working from home, and also the money they can save. So they might also be less inclined to spend on actual conference attendance if it could be done in a virtual way. So not so good for us. Might be good for as a general picture, because it increases maybe participation of people that would be excluded due to not being able to afford those conferences. But obviously, as a conference provider,
I will try to remain positive.
yeah, different income streams.
Yeah, we've got a few ideas in the pipeline.
Good.
Obviously, at the moment, it's all student focused.
Yeah.
To get the campus safe for student return. So lovely to see everybody. Thank you very much. Take care.
Gina. We've got another question from Adam now. Adam, I don't know if you're able to bring yourself in, but you've posed a question for us there.
Yep, I can do that. Well, it's just a question really to do with the standards. I'm just envisaging a kind of a plethora of loads of different standards, much in the same way that if I go to a restaurant and I'll see, so many different standards about what rating it is. And if there are loads of different standards for COVID, is that going to dilute consumer trust in the future? So is there a move to have a national standard for COVID?
Yeah. So Adam, the Good to Go, the Visit England Good to Go standard is exactly that. And I absolutely agree with you. And I think one of the frustrations, because it took a long time for the guidance to come out, was that in the absence of there being a national standard, lots of people like the AA and all sorts of other people were developing standards in absentia. However, the We're Good to Go standard is the one that is being adopted nationally by the hospitality industry. So that's the one that the customer should be looking for. And lots of other organisations that have already developed something are weighing in behind it now. So it's up to us in Visit England really to get that message out that that's the one that is critical.
The next webinar that's or one of the next webinars, not the next, is Deirdre. Of course, you're joining us for the Translating Culture Online, and very much, social distancing, of course, means cultural distancing, and the principal challenge posed by both the arts and other sort of tourism sectors. And that one's coming up on the 28th of July at 2 o'clock. So very much about how we translate culture online, and how can we actually do we translate it online, or do we need to rethink that and create a new experience? But I'll stop talking because I don't want to spoil anything for that one. We haven't got any more questions that have come through at the moment. Oh, we have a question for Blessing. Blessing, I don't know if you're able to join us.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a question, it's more of a suggestion really, like I just typed in. It's the thought of creating a virtual Kent, so that yes, there might not be a lot of movement at the moment, but like someone suggested earlier, if we can campaign for a virtual Kent now, targeting the world really, over the next 12 months, when there's movement again, everyone would know that there is a Kent. So that for conferences, for events, for their holidays, for whatever it is, business, tourism, they know that Kent exists, and we've got a very, very great selling point, which is we're the Garden of England. So why not let us capitalize on that? And like I said, it's going to take a lot of collaboration, small businesses, universities, the government, everyone really. So where we shift from just being a tourist location to more, it's a great place to live, it's a great place to get your kids to go to school, it's a great place to do business, and everything really. I think that's something we should think about. It's an opportunity for us to take Kent out to the world virtually.
Just to come back on that, Blessing, to say we chair something called the Promoting Kent group, which we've been doing for a number of years with Locating Kent and also Producing Kent, and the Screen Tourism group as well. And I think to do exactly that, which is, as you say, it's not just about us as a tourism destination, but great places to visit are also great places to live and to invest as well. And I think that group has continued to meet virtually. And I think as working with KCC as well, you know, the promotion of the county as somewhere that is going to be a great place for people to continue to work and live and invest in, I think will be key. But I think you're absolutely right. The more we can do collaboratively, particularly with big players like the university, like some of our major industrial partners, I think will be really critical, because I think the world of work is changing. The world of travel is changing, and we need to be ready as a county. And I think there are some real opportunities actually for us as a county as things start to change, and that centre of gravity shifts away from maybe London to more rural communities. And as you say, we've got a lot to offer, and for families and for businesses too.
What do you predict there's going to be new types of experiences coming online? Is there anything that you think from a sort of horizon scanning? Do you think that, I know we talked about the you mentioned about the boats on, but new, I suppose, digital tech online. We talked about the 3 T's and technology obviously being part of that. Any sort of predictions there as to where you think anything may start to emerge rather than evolve?
I mean, we've seen quite a few changes already now during the lockdown. We've seen museums going fully online, yeah, that you can walk through different museums. We have gigs now going online. Yeah, I have my first virtual gig next week that I will attend. Yeah, paid for virtual gig. Theatres are thinking about going online. Or we've seen with the National Theatre Live, for example, or the Globe, that they stream a lot of their performances online as well. We've seen some interesting things around tourist attractions too, though. For example, I remember the National Aquarium in Portsmouth. They ran online yoga sessions, yeah, within the aquarium that was streamed. Again, to keep themselves in the minds of people, so people don't forget about them once they can open up again. And I think that might be one way of keeping yourself interesting, let's put it that way, but also one way of maybe engaging people that traditionally would have not visited you, be due to distance or to just access, really.
And in terms of the research that you're doing at the moment within the school, obviously you spoke about yourself at the very beginning and in the area. What are the sort of topics that you're keen to look at in terms of your research around this whole space?
I think it's more about the response to a crisis like this. Since I look at small, medium-sized enterprises, I'll be probably looking more into innovations that we discussed. And as we said, like an innovation doesn't need to be a massive groundbreaking thing, but can be something very new and something very useful for a small business.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. We've got no more. We've got a comment from Tom. Tom, great to see you again on one of these. No questions, but thank you for the presentations and the insight planning for the county. I think everybody would echo. I think at 5-2, I'll draw this bit to a close. But I will just say once again, on behalf of everybody, this is probably going to be the quietest clap ever. But thank you so much to Dr. Julianne Thieme and Deirdre Wells from Visit Kent. Thank you so much for your time and effort there. Thank you.